What are the standards that we're using, and are we looking at a system that has simply robbed Peter to pay Paul, and it's not a fair and equitable system?
Yes, I want to cut you off right there. I want to give Zach a chance to respond. Do you have any insight on this?
I don't particularly have as much insight on the charters themselves, but what I've learned looking at the Louisiana Voucher Program, which many of you all are probably familiar with, is if we're taking money from the public schools, we should have accountability. And so I think Ms. Shirley was talking about how there was better accountability for the charters here. There's that, but we have to keep it that way, because if we look at the vouchers, which don't have any accountability at all, the things they're teaching are absolutely obscene and are going to hurt. Like, I mean, we can debate over the charters, but we also have a program right now that's clearly hurting our students.
Okay. Speaking of the voucher program, it's also one of my questions, so I want to move right into that. There will also come out, challenging the constitutionality of this program, funneling, public dollars to private schools. And there's also been some issues around the curriculum that's taught in these private schools to these public school students. And Zach, I know you dealt with this specifically, just with your fight against the Louisiana Science and Education Act. And I just wanted to know, can you speak to, what are you really going to be teaching my child in these schools? What do you think, why do you think that it's a problem when dealing with voucher programs and the curriculum that they can impart to students?
Okay, I'm going to start by saying, first, we don't actually know exactly what any schools are teaching, not because we're not trying to find out, but because the general administration and the Department of Education have been refusing to release what we need to be able to see that. So they've been hiding this information. But what we do know is that there's some schools where we figured out, for example, one of the schools I discovered has on their web, they have a newsletter on the website which they said that any theory that, like the age of the earth, that goes against God's word is an error. And then they went on to describe scientists as sinful men who were basically trying to do science so they didn't have to be moral. Now, I know a lot of scientists, and I don't think they're sinful men. But then we go into other stuff some of these schools are teaching. Most of them, this is where we couldn't figure out what exactly they're teaching, but many of them said they were using curriculums like Accelerated Christian Education, Abika, or Bob Jones University Press. And while we don't know the specific books, some of these books are teaching that humans lived with dinosaurs, that some dinosaurs were actually dragons that breathed fire. They also lived with humans. We all probably seen the Loch Ness Monster, where they said the Loch Ness Monster is real and disproves evolution. And then it gets getting out of science, which is mainly my issue, into like history or math. They deny some types of math. They essentially said the KKK is moral. Like, it's absurd what's being taught in these schools. Now, we don't know what schools exactly teaching what, but we have a general guide with these things. They're teaching stuff like the Loch Ness Monster is real.
Does anyone else want to just chime in on the concept of the voucher program? Let's go ahead.
Two things about the vouchers. All of the things that Zach was alluding to, or most of the things that Zach was alluding to, if you want to read them firsthand, Mother Jones did a great web feature about all of the outrageous things contained in the curricula of some of the schools that have received vouchers. He was talking about accountability, and one of the things, in Louisiana we have this giant school accountability system, and your success or failure is measured by graduation, cohort rate, dropout index, and overwhelmingly test scores. That'll probably be a separate question, so I won't get into that. I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that when the voucher program was announced, there was no accountability system in place for schools receiving vouchers. Following the public outcry, Bessie and John White did come up with an accountability system for vouchers, which is online. And basically, if I mention anything that's online, I have it saved on my computer, so if you went to see the link, you can see me after the panel. I have my computer back there. But as it stands now, this accountability system has not fully been released yet. As it stands now, what the publicly available documents do say is that schools who receive at least 40 voucher students have to have those students take the same state tests as people in public schools, both charter and traditional public schools. In order to continue receiving vouchers, those schools need to earn a performance index score of, I believe it's 50. It translates to the 9th percentile of Louisiana public schools. If that were a public school receiving that score, those students would have an opportunity to apply for vouchers. That school would be shut down, the 9th percentile, and I did teach in one of those 9th percentile schools. No one wants their child to go to one of those schools. So you have a vast difference between the levels of at least testing achievement that are being expected of students in the public schools and students who have gone through the voucher system.
Anyone else want to chime in on vouchers?
Yeah, I would say that a slightly different opinion on the debate on vouchers is that I think the voucher bill was largely a diversion or a red herring. When you have 350,000 people eligible for a program, and at best it turned out there were 5,000 seats open, there will be fewer open if John White goes through with the accountability procedures that he's saying, which would include internal audits of private schools, things that we don't do with charters, such as auditing teaching methods and teaching evaluation. The real risk of privatization in this state, of course, is charter schools, because there are facilities for charter schools. If you close a public school and fire all the teachers, you do have a facility, unlike the vouchers. The second point, though, I want to make is that this is not an experiment. We talked about, I like the mixed metaphor of an experiment or a petri dish. And if you come from an interest in science and plant sciences as I do, an experiment is where you have a hypothesis and you test it. If it doesn't work, you stop doing it. And you test it with rigorous standards. We really are not running experiments, we're running a petri dish, because in a petri dish, and I'm a self-taught mycologist, I'll tell you what you do is you put up what you think is a fungus in a petri dish on agar, and it may turn out to be a toxin, a fungal toxin, very dangerous for a plant, or it may turn out to be something good, but you really don't have any control over it. You have to be very careful about that. We're not really using scientific methods here, and the voucher program is a good example of that. And Zach, I think, and close on this, is saying, I think he's a good example of where we have to get rigorous, evidence-based research, which is not coming from the media. It's not coming from the print and from the digital media. It's not even coming from academia, dominated by the foundations, the Gates Foundation, and these other groups that have an agenda on this. It's coming from what we call citizen scientists in plant science world, which is that people take it upon themselves to do what other people should have been doing in terms of research. And the work that he did on the curricula of the schools, some of these charter schools that have evangelical curricula, is precisely what people at this conference are capable of doing. It is the social media, independent bloggers who aren't beholden to commercial interest or foundation interest that are capable and should be doing the kind of research about how do we get the best education possible in Louisiana, and not create a model that other places are going to use that will create a separate and unequal system.
You hear that call to action, everybody? Get on it.
Can I make just a point of interest? The lawsuit is about money following the child into a private or parochial setting, and if that bothers you, if you do not believe those dollars should be going to those settings, then recognize that this is not the only place that we're spending dollars, public dollars in the private schools. Mr. Robichaud can attest to the fact that we have to pay for transportation for private school students in this district. Dollars go for textbooks and other supplies in private schools. So this is not the first time we've seen the public system bleed money towards the private and parochial systems.
I just want to move, because you mentioned something really interesting, Lance, when you said that, after Katrina, teachers are fired. And I just want to talk specifically about how this entire system has affected teachers. And maybe, Elizabeth, you can give some insight to this. But basically, since, Katrina and the charter school movement, there's been a vast shift in the way that teachers have been recruited, what kind of teachers are hired, what type of job security those teachers have once they do get into the position. And the question I pose is, how can charter schools make sure they are recruiting quality teachers and that these teachers stay long-term if the majority of the recruiting pool comes from National Recruitment Pool, such as Teach for America, Teach NOLA, you know, what panelists, what do you have to say? Do you have any insight on that, Elizabeth?
Yes. Okay, so the question is how do charters retain quality staff and ensure that they get quality staff? Okay. Wow. I will try not to make this a very, very long answer. Well, first thing I should say, in the spirit of disclosure, I am a Teach-Nola alumna. I was a member of the First Summer Institute, which was in 2007. People who went to that institute that particular year are in a unique position because we went through the summer Teach-Nola training, which is identical to the TFA training, and then a number of us earned our certifications at the University of New York.